having conflict with people around me is that until unless you address the conflict, you're not going to grow. And if growing is important, Utkarsh, then you better go and have that conversation right now.
Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Shafer of Talks with Dr. Shafer. I'm a physician, mom, life coach, musician, author, publisher, and I am passionate about storytelling as a tool to help you reclaim your story and build your most beautiful future. And today we have a wonderful special guest on the show who has done just that and is helping others on their journey as well. Utkarsh Narang is a learning consultant and the founder of Ignited Neurons, executive coach, TEDx speaker, author, and content creator based in Melbourne, Australia. He started out his career as a physiotherapist before pivoting repeatedly to find his true passions, and has moved continents and careers to reclaim his story and build his beautiful future. Utkarsh, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you, Dr. Schaefer, for having me here. Quite an intriguing journey both of us have had. And I think in the next few minutes that we speak about this, there'll be a lot of parallels that we'll draw because this idea of introducing yourself as a mom, to me, I think introducing myself as a parent is also equally, if not more important than all the other accolades that we've collected in our journeys. But looking forward to this beautiful conversation.
Oh, I love starting from that place, really, truly,
Mhm.
because for me, and I'd be interested to know because of you bringing it up in this fashion, for me, there was kind of life before parenthood and life after. And it was such a distinct difference for me because I was training, I was a neurology resident. And I remember going back to training when my daughter, my firstborn, was 5 weeks old.
Wow.
And now, I'm sleeping at the hospital. I'm up all night. At that point in time, I was going between two hospitals. It was the hospital that was there to take care of everyone who couldn't necessarily go to other hospitals. We have the system in the United States where we have safety net hospitals essentially to make sure that everyone is covered, whether they have the ability to care for their healthcare or not, especially in larger cities. So I was in charge of that hospital that night, their neurology program. And I was also in charge of taking care of the pediatric patients at the children's hospital that was pretty much next door, while also taking phone calls for the veterans hospital a little bit further down the street. And so here I come, have a 5-week-old at home. I'm pumping. I'm just, I've just had, minor procedures and things that women go through after they have babies.
Right.
And I remember I was taking care of patients at both hospitals and I was going back and forth and back and forth. It was a very busy night. And I'd always really had a passion for taking care of children. I loved that.
Mhm.
But after I had a child, the amount of empathy I had for both, a parent at the hospital for adults and this newborn baby at the pediatric hospital,
Mhm.
and what parents and their children go through, especially early on in life when they're separated, as I was separated from my child. That experience just marked me forever. And I think it's just having children has completely changed me and how I view the world. How has your experience of fatherhood changed how you approach your career and life?
Yeah, I 100% echo with everything that you're saying because I truly believe that becoming a parent just changes you completely. And now that can change you for the good or sometimes for the bad as well, as I've seen in many cases. I think for me personally, it's been how I put it is it's been a rewarding journey, but it's also grueling at so many times because you want to care for that other human being in such a deep and thoughtful manner that if they get hurt, you feel the pain. And you get so kind of engrossed in that process that it's really a true definition of being unconditional is how I feel, Dr. Sheffer. And one thing that comes to my mind is that as I've seen them grow up now, they're 14. My elder one is about to turn 14 next month, and the younger one's at about 10. As I've seen them grow, I feel the days seem extremely long. They can seem like, when is this day going to end? But the years seem extremely short, and they've gone by too quickly. Um, and both being boys, I think they're one of those creatures who have a lot of high energy. They want to play basketball and table tennis and run and cycle around and this and that. So I've put in that investment because I really feel that in terms of our careers, in terms of all that needs to be done on the personal side, yes, that'll go on, but that'll go on after they've gone into teenage and after they've become adults, which is when their dependence on us reduces. So a lot of my decisions in life have been driven by that thought that very soon they're going to want to fly away and build their own nest. And before that happens, let me just make everything that's possible through that journey and learn and grow with them, which is just a joy.
Mm, it is such a joy. And I heard something recently. I wonder how it will resonate with
Mhm.
you. I found it to be so true about that when we're parenting, to be really effective parents, we can't get on the field. We're a coach, but we
Yeah.
don't play in the game, right?
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. And we're just molding them, or maybe just providing them the environment where they can find who they truly are to then go on and do beautiful things for the world. Because I think as a parent, the best thing that can happen is that a child grows up to become a responsible adult for this planet. And just before this conversation started, we were talking about what all is going on the planet right now, and how many pressing issues there are to for the next generation in the future to take care of. So I think it's a big responsibility that's been put onto our shoulders.
It is, and I think it's really interesting because again, the coaching parallels of, why do we do the work that we do as coaches who also, you are a physiotherapist, you are a
Yeah.
founder of a consultancy. You have all of these other skills, but at the end of the day, I think when you have a coach's heart and a perspective of a coach, you really come back to that because when you're passionate about helping others and when you're passionate about helping your children to have the tools they need when you're not around, when they are facing life's challenges, that is so important rather than I think some of the older styles of parenting that many of us experienced or perhaps generations before experienced where it was more of a molding, you will do
Mm,
as you are told,
yeah.
and because they're so fixated on having to learn the rules, they
Yeah.
don't learn how to cope with challenges that they haven't encountered before. They're just learning your rules, whereas when you're coaching them, they're learning how to thrive outside
Yeah.
in the world.
And it's a very hard balance to strike because growing up in India, my parents were both doctors, and so they wanted me to become a doctor, and they never compelled me. I would say when someone asks me, Utkarsh, how's your childhood? I don't have any trauma to share, and sometimes I almost feel like, oh, I don't have any trauma. Then how do I tell my phoenix story, and how do I tell people that, oh, I've risen from the ashes? But I think it's very important for us to understand that what worked 20 years ago does not work today. And in a couple of years from now, with the speed at which the world is shifting and changing, it's not going to work again. And so to put those same ideas into the next generation is actually doing an underservice to I think them and to ourselves as well. But having said that, I think just giving them these ideas, what you were saying, the coaching mindset, before I go there, I often say that my children are actually my first coaches, because I would remember this, Shifer, that I would be trying to talk to them or play a board game, and if an email pops up onto my Gmail and I'm responding to it and looking at it, the little one would say, "Dad, you're not paying attention to us." And I would realize that yes, that's such it's his brutal honesty that's helping me just shift in this moment and pause and say, oh, I got to put my phone down. Now if there's something urgent that happens, I tell them that dad needs to respond to this. Our game, the ticket to ride that we're playing, is equally important, but I have to respond to this and I'll be back with you for 30 seconds. And they understand that because they know that work is important, and I don't want them to feel uh, that there's kind of this very difficult shift that I'm trying to make between them and choose between them and my work. Both are equally important. You are more important than the work, but I'm going to pay attention to this because this in this moment needs my attention. So it's a very fine balance, and I think as parents we are treading this thin wire like a tightrope walker.
Yeah, absolutely. But you are doing a lot of important things, and that seemingly, low impact moment actually has a lot of impact because you are verbalizing, "Hey, you are my priority. You
Yeah.
are dad's priority." And a part of you being my priority is that I work. And also a part of my respecting myself is that I
Yeah.
do work that is important and that I'm passionate about. And so I'm going to prioritize you, but there are circumstances where I do have to potentially look at my phone, and you're giving them that expectation and you're showing them that it's okay for them to set those boundaries, because I think that's something that many people often struggle with, is learning how to really in a communicative way and in a
Mhm.
positive way
Mhm.
enforce boundaries. And if they haven't experienced that when they were children, being done again in a
Mhm.
really calm and helpful way, just
Yeah.
communicative way, they don't know how to do it when they're out in the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. And these I think the conversation we're having, it's all about how we make the other person feel, because we sometimes treat children as children, but they're not. In Hindu mythology, and I'm diving into spirituality straight on here from parenting, it's the soul, right, which has its own age, is what we're uh, taught. And my grandma used to say, this was when I was about, I think, 7 or 8 years old. She used to tell me, Utkarsh, you have a very mature soul. And at that moment, I had no idea what she means by a mature soul, because here I was like an 8 year old wanting to play some games with her, and she would say, "You have a very mature soul." But now, as I age and gracefully so, I tend to understand what that might mean, because we're carrying these beautiful, and in Indian mythology, we do believe in the afterlife and things like that. So, yeah, I think kids need to be treated as adults. They have their choices, they have their whims and fancies, they have their emotions, and there has to be full respect from a parent to a child, even though there is this hierarchy almost being set up by what we've learned over the years.
You're speaking my language, that, respect forward, respect first. That's the way that we connect. And that's
Yeah.
how we get respect back from our children, is by showing them what respect looks like. So, oh, yeah, that's absolutely my language. I want to kind of pivoting from the story of now with your children. So I don't want to skip the steps of you facing immigration with a very young child
Mhm.
and having to relocate your entire life, moving from India to Australia while parenting, while reestablishing yourself in a career. Tell us what led to that decision and what you experienced both personally and as a family.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was as you asked this question, there's goosebumps going down my spine, because it's a story that's very personal to both my wife and myself. So the whole kind of premise to this was that my wife is an occupational therapist, and she deals with kids with special needs. Back home in India, Dr. Schaefer, she had her own private practice where she had a team of about 15-20 people. They were taking care of kids of all needs, from autism to ADHD and to cerebral palsy, and others. But it was a very draining task, because the families and the child, they have not just physical needs, but a lot of emotional needs. And plus, the impact of running a business uh, during the times of COVID and then post COVID was a lot of challenge for my wife. And she started to get drained and feel burnout, which she did not realize in those moments. She would be at the clinic and she would give her all, and then she would come home and then she would be just not there. And so we went to a few doctors, and I'm getting a little bit more emotional talking about this, but I want to be very honest and transparent with our audience here. So we went to the doctor, and they said that this is a case of insomnia, because she was not sleeping well at night. She was diagnosed with depression, and doctors wanted to start her on antidepressants, and she was told that she has fibromyalgia, which would lead to this inexplainable pain all across her body. And we were like, what do we do about all of this? Because there was this fear that at some point I might lose her. There was fear that how we're raising our boys, and this was only 2 years ago, and so not too far away from where we are right now. And so when all of this was happening, we started to think about, like, let's just move countries and maybe that'll help. But moving countries at the ripe age of 38 for both of us, and kids at 12 and 9, was not an easy endeavor. And we were all set. Everything was kind of in a beautiful place except her health. But I think that choice, that her health was the primary reason for our existence as a couple and as a family, made us realize that we need to make that switch. And then once you put in the intention, I think this is a prime example. Someone on LinkedIn actually reached out to her from Melbourne, Australia, said, "We have a job for you. Why don't you come over?" And I was like, this is going to be a scam, because why would they leave the whole island of Australia and reach out to you in Delhi, India, giving you a job? But she went ahead with those interviews. First interview, they loved her, and they called us to this new place called Melbourne. Fear, anxiety, uncertainty. I don't know what all words I could use, but we did not know what we were doing, because in about 2 weeks from the moment our visa came, we were asked to sell our belongings, say goodbyes to our parents and families, and come to this new land. But having said that, this transition, Shafer, has, I think, made a deep impact on us as a family, because the day we landed here, the physical pain started to go away for my wife. Her medicines, whatever she was taking, were completely switched off. She continues her meditations, hikes. She has a good work life balance now. And we feel blessed as a family. And through all this transition, there was one big fear, that what if our children don't appreciate and understand what they're going through? But I think what helped was that from day one, they were part of the conversation. That this is why we're trying to move from this country to here. We want your opinion, and we want this to be a best kind of move for you as well. So let's do it together. So it was not that two people were making decisions for four, but four people were having conversations to make decisions for four. And today, 18 months later, we call this home. Elder one's going to be 14 next year, enjoys playing the drums, has a couple of bands here. The younger one loves his basketball and friends in school. So we can call this home. We can call this home.
Wow, that's such a beautiful story of just taking life by the reins and saying, well, nothing's working. Let's try something that maybe to your family might have seemed a little out of left field, a little unusual and extreme, but it worked for you. You trusted your gut and you trusted what the universe brought to you. You mentioned how, when you set your intention, things happen. And it's really interesting because there's more and more evidence in the neurology field about manifestation, right? And about when you decide something, your behavior changes. It's not necessarily that it just magically appears next to you, right? It's not like a genie situation where you rub a lamp and it comes because you asked for it. You changed your intention, you set your intention, and then you're going to change your behaviors, right? And those change in behaviors, you're going to put yourself out there. Someone may not be on LinkedIn and they may say, well, I need to start a new career. What does that mean? Well, I at least need to put myself forward facing. I need to get myself out there and start that LinkedIn account.
Correct. No, absolutely. And I think, see, we often attribute a lot of these things to luck, but I think you have to actually put action into it for luck to even operate. The more you expose yourself to opportunities, the higher is the probability of success happening. And in terms of the family, with my changing careers from physical therapy to filming and editing with a professor to starting Ignite Neurons, they were used to to bombs being thrown at us as a family, and I think so they were in a way ready for it. Plus, the other thing I think that's really critical, which I'm seeing get missed out in many relationships, Schaefer, is that the couples are not communicating these days. They're feeling that we're on these individual journeys. Yes, you are, but those individual journeys run on parallel tracks, and so you have to grow yourself as an individual. But if you're in a relationship with anyone, then you have to grow together as well, and there's no other way to do that but to communicate. And I was speaking to a coachee a couple of weeks ago, and she was overwhelmed beyond belief, or in tears. This was the first time we were talking about, and I made her go through a visualization, because I did not want to communicate a solution to her. I wanted her to come up with. And through the conversation, through the visualization, and we'll pass on the details, what came out to her was that the biggest thing that's missing in my life right now is having walks with my husband.
Mm.
And that moment, it was such an aha for her. Her tears disappeared, smile, beaming smile on her face. And she's like, if we can go for that 15-minute walk every day, our 3 kids, everything else, our jobs, we'll take care of everything, but we have to go for that walk. Now it's a small shift, but unless you connect as a couple, as a partner, as a team, how are you gonna then manage the rest of it?
That's so beautiful. So I love that example. And I think coaching is such an important way to help people get to those moments. And it's interesting because, especially when it comes to things like couples therapy,
Mhm.
it's intriguing for me because I think in most situations, the work that really needs to be done is on the individual level to help you learn how to communicate with others, not necessarily to fix your communication style as a couple, but to get to the why, to get down to the root of the discord so that we can start thinking about solutions. And the solution can't be to fix this other person.
The work is in you. I mean, it's and I'll tell you, like, I've had my own journey. There was this time very early in our marriage, or in my approach to relationships and people, that I was a conflict phobic. I would not
Mm.
want to. I would run right across the street away from conflict as quickly as possible, because I really thought that, what's the point? But now I understand,
Mm.
and it has come with a lot of inner work, with a lot of patience, with a lot of having conflict with people around me, is that until unless you address the conflict, you're not going to grow. And if growing is important, Utkarsh, then you better go and have that conversation right now. There's no point in sleeping over it and doing it in 2 days from now, by which the assumptions in the other person have gone up by infinite percent. Instead, why don't you tackle it right now? Nip in the bud, have that conversation. If you've done a mistake, say sorry. I say sorry to my kids, because sometimes I'm just, maybe at times I've been aggressive with them for some reason, and I'm rude. And I don't think that's a skill that, or that's a quality that I want them to feel that their dad has, or take that quality to themselves and say that, oh, it's okay to be rude because dad behaves like that. And so I would go and say, I apologize for the way I behave. I should not have. This is the reason I did that. And they are actual adults who understand why that's happening. And so why not take that now away from parenting to relationships to the workplace to everywhere? So the core hypothesis that I feel I work with is, if I can become a better human being every single day, I can take care of the rest of it. I don't have to learn to
Mm.
go and become a better manager, better leader, better parent, blah, blah, blah. Just become a better human being every single day, and you got this.
I couldn't agree more. And isn't it interesting when we do work as coaches with businesses, and when you're going on that journey of getting deep to the why, right? And we're not necessarily getting there immediately. That takes work and it takes willingness.
Correct.
And there may be some pushback, especially if you're working with someone who has built up a lot of walls, or they just haven't done this before. They haven't really thought about how all these inner feelings and responses and reactions are affecting them in the workplace, in
True.
their home. They see it as very segmented. And to get to the heart of what you're saying is, no, when we work on ourself, we change how we show up in all aspects of our life for the better. And in most of our conflicts, again, we can kind of find, okay, how am I showing up for this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is this how I want to show up? No, I get to edit. I don't have to be the person I was yesterday, or the person that my boss thinks I am, or my colleague thinks I am. I get to decide how I'm showing up today, no matter how anyone else is showing up.
And this power of choice, it's a real superpower. And I feel if we give away this choice to our past, to the inner demons, to people around us, then why are we even alive? And I know this is very strong, but I think each human being has the power to choose where they want to go from here. And I'm not saying that, oh, because Dr. Shafer and I have a conflict, so I should just stop this podcast. No, that's not the right choice. But let's address the conflict. Let's have a conversation.
Mm.
Let's choose to try and resolve it. And sometimes it's okay if things don't resolve. Then maybe it's time for us to part our ways and go to the opposite direction. But until
Mm.
unless we do that with our full intention, care, love, and respect, I think it's worth to choose that path once.
Mm. It's so true. I work with a lot of victims of domestic abuse. And I think also when you are outside of domestic abuse, when you are working with people who have really abandoned themselves over time for one reason or another, and they are showing up in the world minus their autonomy, a sensation that they will tend to endorse is that they don't feel like they're living their life. Life feels almost like it's happening to them. And then they get stuck in that cycle, in the cycle of re-victimization, because all the data they're getting from life is that they don't have agency. They don't have autonomy. And so working with a coach to help really break that cycle and shift the perspective is so important. Now, I understand that you've created a journal
Mhm.
to help people along the coaching process. Could you tell
Yeah,
me more about that?
absolutely. So the idea was that every time I'm coaching people, the idea that you have to work on yourself comes up, and we spend a few sessions doing that, which is super critical. And I think if you can go find yourself a coach, everyone should do that. Everyone on this planet deserves to experience coaching in its truest form once. That's for sure. But what I realized was that if we could give something to the end user where they could kind of go deep within themselves, spend some time with themselves, understanding who they really are, what are some values that they resonate with, and how do they want to show up in the world, as you were saying, I think then that would make their journeys a little bit easier. And that's why we created this journal. It's available on Amazon. It's about 180 pages of exercises and activities, and the first question it asks you is, who are you really? Because I think that question, we don't spend enough time contemplating about that. We come to the world, we let our parents, our caregivers, society, we let society shape us in beautiful and sometimes not so beautiful ways, but we never pause to ask ourselves, who am I? How do I want to show up in this world? What is it that I'm chasing and trying to pursue in this lifetime? What's my purpose? And purpose is a word that's been abused, overused, misused. But the purpose could be just to serve my family of two people or three people, or to just serve myself. And I think that's what this journey will allow people to do, is to understand where they are and where they want to go in their lives.
When you were speaking on that, I just imagined a person who was taking on a new article of clothing from everyone they were encountering. Like, you
Oh,
think I should go to medical school. You think I'm not cool enough. You
mm,
make fun of this part of me. You think my hair should be longer. You think my body should look different. You think I'm awkward. All of these, should have, could have, would have things that we carry along. And I'm imagining this person that's just can barely walk. We have
yeah.
a movie that's quite popular here in the States,
Mhm.
and it's a Christmas themed movie where the youngest child gets put in this snowsuit and he falls down
Mm.
and he literally can't stand up.
And good.
Everyone
Yeah.
knows this. We watch
Yeah.
it for 24 hours on Christmas Day every year. And
Mhm.
I'm just imagining this person by the time they're a young adult in their 20s, late 20s, walking around and they can barely move because they're
Yeah.
being suffocated by all of these external things. And they haven't dove deep into who they are.
Yeah. And the simplest of questions they can ask is, what would it take to shed this clothing, one clothing at a time? Because you don't have to carry what's been given to you. You don't even have to take it in the first place. But if you've received it and you're not 25 or 28 or 37 or 48, what's stopping you from taking those clothing off and choosing to be who you want to be? I think it's just the awareness. And my challenge with the, and I was talking to a friend about this, Maslow's hierarchy, we've all been fed this idea that you have to have those physiological needs met to then go up the pyramid and then get to the level where there's self-actualization. But self-actualization in its own self does not really need anything else on the lower part of the pyramid. So what if we could just reverse the pyramid and start by building awareness of who we are, what our values are, and then we go on and build from that. I was speaking at a HR summit a couple of months ago, and I asked them, like, what do you really need to think about yourself? What do you really need to go on to this path of self-realization? Maybe a pen and a paper, maybe not even a pen, maybe a pencil, maybe nothing. Just sitting with yourself, your thoughts, and trying to challenge those thoughts that have been shaped by humanity in different ways, and then choosing to who you are and what's the path that you want to take.
I love that. And you, during your lifetime, have, in many instances, pivoted, taken a new path. I want to dive in. You touched on it earlier, but I want to dive into the time that you spent in my old stomping grounds of New York City at Columbia University. Tell me
Yeah.
about that experience and how that shaped you.
So I used to be a physical therapist, physiotherapist if you are in India, but the US calls it physical therapy. And I had 3 clinics in Delhi, India, and they were all going really well. It was a very purposeful job because you're helping people live better lives by taking care of their pains. But I always had this intention and want almost to touch lives across the world and to have a deeper impact on the planet. And this was back in 2012-13. I started to feel dissatisfied and meet people, network, put myself out there again, the thing that we spoke about. And then I met a professor at Columbia Business School. And they said, Utkarsh, we could hire you because we're starting up this new company. But what would you do? I'm like, I'll figure it out. Just hire me and then we'll take it from there. And so I told them to experiment with me for 3 months. January of 2013, it was that give me 3 months. If I can prove my worth to you, then I'll stay with you. If not, then I'll go back to my physical therapy and go back to the life that was kind of was my destiny. The 3 months changed my life. I put everything, all my heart and soul into learning a new skill. And I thought that these guys want to build video content. And if I can learn to film and edit, then I'll become indispensable and they'll not throw me out. The imposter in that moment, Dr. Shafer, was shouting so loudly in my head that Utkarsh, you're going to fail at it. You're going to crash and burn. We don't know what's wrong with you. Why do you keep doing these stupid things? But okay, let's see what happens. But I'd learned to shush that voice down by asking it that you're asking me to fail. You're
Mm.
planning for me to crash and burn. But my mind, my brain, what if I succeed? Then what will open up? And with that thought, I just put all my heart and soul into it, learned this art of filming and editing. And I would be in New York City, Columbia for months at a stretch, filming and editing lectures for professors. And it was, I mean, I still pinch myself because here there were students in the executive MBA program who've paid like thousands and thousands of dollars, 100,000 plus tuition fees, and here I am standing in that class with my camera, recording and filming a professor talking about coaching and feedback and growth mindset and emotions and all the leadership topics that you could think of, and I don't even have to pay them. It's they who are paying me for it, and so it was just a magical time for my life, and I built about 400 hours of content during the 4 years. And it was truly just a pivotal moment for my existence. But I think the biggest impact that happened during those times, Shaper, was that it made me realize that if I put my heart into anything, I can achieve that. And that confidence, I think, still carries till date.
That's so beautiful. And I really found my academic self in New York City as well as a young person, and so I that resonates so deeply with me, and it brings back so many lovely memories. For me, it wasn't at Columbia, it was at a rival, it was at NYU.
Ooh.
So
It's a beautiful city. I mean, New York City is something else, and I would always like feel I could be there for work and travel, but like for me, and my wife and I spoke about this many times. For us to relocate and live in New York City as a family was always like, no, that's too much for us. We will be overwhelmed.
Yeah. And maybe not in this season. I am getting the feeling about you, Utkarsh, that like we can't take anything off the table, right? We're going to go
No.
with the flow of life and see where it takes you. I'm not taking anything off the table.
Why should we? Why should we? And there's this quote by Gandhi that has really been kind of inspirational for me. He used to say that when I sleep at night, I die, and then I'm born again the
Mm.
next morning when I wake up. And to me, that's what the sense of life is. This could be the last conversation you and I have. And after this, I could have an accident or a heart attack or something could happen to you. And I know it sounds grave, but that's the truth. And so all I can do is be my best in this moment with you. And when I go out, kids are on a spring break right now here in Australia. I'm going to go out and see if they're well fed. Can I go back to my next coaching conversation in an hour from now? And that's all I do. I'll be my best with them. And then at 3 o'clock, I'll stop work and I'll go to the park and play basketball with them. And that's it. And if a few years from now, I feel that maybe coaching is not the right profession, maybe there's something bigger that awaits me, then let's take that leap because future is a man-made concept. Who knows will it arrive or not? And when it does, it'll become the present. So we actually just have the present. Let's make the most of it.
Mm. I love that. And it makes me think we aren't what we are, right? We aren't our collection of titles and experiences. We are who we are. So
Beautiful.
then to ask the question to you that you were asking, who is Utkarsh and what motivates you? What do you truly want?
Experience truly motivates
Mm.
me, and the experience of having a banana, the experience of looking at the blue sky and the green grass, the experience of seeing kids grow up, the experience of having this amazing conversation with you across the world on this platform called Riverside. This is all amazing, mesmerizing. And and the five values that I've lived with, they drive everything for me. And they are discipline, excellence, growth, freedom, and love. And I think to me, just to be able to express these values on a day to day, that to me is success. Do I have $1 million in my account? Do I need it? I don't think so. Would I want it? If they can come, that's great. But I would not compromise on the experience. The experience to
Mm.
me is pivotal in how I'm wanting to build my life.
And it makes me think back to that Maslow's hierarchy of needs that you mentioned earlier and your concept of trying to put
Flip
it
it
on
over.
its head. And when you were discussing it earlier, I was contemplating on how, yes, right, our higher needs are truly the most for autonomy. That's our most important need. And that's why it's so important that we do meet the other needs so
Yeah.
that we can be our higher self, right? That's why we have to meet fundamental human rights for everyone. Because if we don't, and they can't turn their attention to their higher self,
Yeah.
then we are missing out on who they could be in this world. Because when they are supported and they have shelter and food and autonomy, then they can make the world a better place and not be in survival mode all the time. And I think that's why it's so important that we fight for freedom and autonomy of everyone. And that starts with how we treat our children, just like we discussed at the top of the hour. That's what sets in these foundations of how we treat and show up for one another so that everyone is doing their very best in this world, and our future that right now sometimes feels daunting and
Mhm,
uncertain. If
mhm.
we're raising our children to meet it head on and to be so fully realized and present in the world, maybe we've got a fighting chance.
I think so. I think so. You're very poetically summarized what we've spoken about, and I think just the one addition that I'll have to this is that the choice is always yours. The choice to be
Mm.
who you are, the choice to be who you want to be, and the choice to find meaning and joy in life. I think that's always ours, and we should not give that choice away.
That is so beautiful. Utkarsh, thank you so much for being here today. It has been such a pleasure to speak with you.
Absolutely. It was a true joy. And I cannot believe that on a podcast we spoke about parenting and work and meaning in life and spirituality. So thank you for this beautiful conversation, Dr. Shafer. I appreciate it.
The pleasure has been ours. And please tell the audience how they can learn more about you and reach out to you for help.
Beautiful. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn. Dr. Shafer will have all the links in the footnotes. Find the journal. It's called the Ignite Life Journal. I think it'll be a great investment in who you can become. About $30-40, not a lot of money, but yeah, find your true meaning. Spend time with yourself, and find me on LinkedIn. That's the best place to do.
That's beautiful. We both know, and so many of our listeners have learned or are on that journey of learning that an investment in yourself is always the very best. So, absolutely go and buy the journal and invest in yourself every day, even if it's small increments to start with. Just, I'm going to read a page, I'm going to read 2 pages.
That's
I'm
it.
going to choose myself. That's okay. Start small and give yourself that data to show that you really are succeeding in life. And the more you do, the more you're going to want to invest in yourself and show up for your life. So, Utkarsh, thank you again for being here. It's been such a pleasure. And thank you so much to our storytellers for being here. Please subscribe to the show so you don't miss any inspiring episodes with upcoming guests, and leave us comments, questions. You can find out more on the website, www.drshaferstedjanova.com. Thank you so much for being here. Stay safe and take care. I'll talk to you soon. Excellent. I will stop it. So